Hello, my name is Molina Brenda. I'm from the Instituto de Carreras Superiores and I'm going to talk about the task-based learning. But before I start to talk about, we need to know the contents that I'm going to develop in this presentation. Of course, in the first we have the introduction and the definition, then we have the historical background, the concrete terminologies, the structural framework, the syllables, the advantages and disadvantages, the theory of language and learning, the activities, and of course, at the end, the conclusion. Well, in the introduction, task-based learning is an approach in which learning revolves around the completion of meaningful tasks. In the TBL approach, the main focus is the authentic use of language for genuine communication. When using task-based learning, teachers ask their students to perform tasks that resemble authentic real-life situations. This approach particularly challenges students who are used to a more traditional classroom, say, focusing on analyzing, practicing, and memorizing a few irregular verbs. Teachers and students who have always interacted in a traditional classroom may feel that style is the best approach. But think for a minute. What happens when students need to use the language in a real situation, say when renting an apartment? Will knowing all the irregular forms of the past tense help them communicate clearly? Probably not. It's knowing how to use them in context that helps. To achieve this, students need to practice, make mistakes, be corrected, and repeat. In the second, I'm going to talk about the historical background, of course, which basically is that task-based language learning has its origin in communicative language teaching and is a subcategory of it. Educators adopted task-based language learning for a variety of reasons. Some moved to task-based syllables in an attempt to make language in the classroom truly communicative, rather than the pseudo-communication that results from classroom activities with no direct connection to real-life situations. One of the most talked about recent methods can be traced back to the strong communicative approach, where teaching is done entirely through communicative tasks, focusing on language use after a task has been completed, is widely accepted as an aid to acquisition, and task repetition gives students the chance to practice new language. Then we have the concrete terminologies. Well, in this part, for understand the TBL, we need to define what a task, planning, and reports means. Well, in the first task, according to Willis, task can be real-life situation or have a pedagogical purpose. Tasks can provide opportunities for students to exchange information with a focus on meaning, not a specific form of pattern structure. Have a clear purpose. Learners should how to outcome they are expected to produce when they finish performing the task. In the planning, students prepare a short oral or written report to tell the class what happened during the task. Then they then practice what they are doing to say in their groups. Meanwhile, the teacher is available for the students to ask for advice to clear up any language questions they may have. And then the report, the students, of course, report back to the class orally or read the written report. The teacher chooses the order of when students will present their reports and may give the students some quick feedback on the content. At this age, the teacher may also play a recording of others doing the same task for the students to compare. Okay, here we have the structural framework. In the first, we have the motivate phase. This phase, of course, is important because if we want the students to be exposed as much as possible as the foreign language, it's important to present the learners with communicative activity to mentally prepare them to use the foreign language exclusively. In the second, we have the pre-task phase, which basically means that introduce the class to the topic and the task, activating topic-related words and phrases, helping students to understand the task instructions. Then in the third, we have the task cycle. This task offers learners the chance to use whatever language they already know in order to carry out the task and then to improve the language under teaching guidance while planning the reports of the task. For example, the students can complete the task in pairs and the teacher listens their dialogues. In the fourth, we have the post-task phase, which in this phase, in the framework, language focus allows a closer study of some of the structure or specific features occurring in the language used during the task cycle. Then we have the task-based syllables. Well, in this part, said that a task-based syllabus is based on task-based learning, an approach where learners carry out tasks such as solving problems or planning an activity. The language learned comes out of the linguistic demand of the activity. A task-based syllabus is structured around a series of these tasks. Then we have the advantages and disadvantages. The advantages of this method is that task-based learning is useful for moving the focus of the learning process from the teacher and the student. It gives the student a different way of understanding language as a tool instead of a specific goal. Then it can bring teaching from abstract knowledge to real-world application. And then a task is helpful in meeting the immediate needs of the learners and provides a framework for creating classes interesting and able to address to the students' needs. Here we have the disadvantages. Since it encourages students to use their own language and vocabulary, it is necessary for the teacher to help the students expand this. Otherwise, students will not learn new phrases or words by themselves, but only increase skills in using the language the students already possesses. The evaluation part is critical, of course, for the students to become self-aware of the learning they have just gone through. The theory of language and learning. Well, in this part, the theory of language is in the TBL is mainly motivated by the theory of learning, of course. However, there are several assumptions about the nature of language, which is that language is primarily a means of making meaning, is a conversation is the main focus of language and the keystone of language acquisition. Multiple models of language inform TBL, and the lexical units are central in language use and learning. In the theory of learning, we have that the TBL shows assumptions about the nature of language underlying communicative language teaching, but some additional principles play a central role. Task provides both input processing necessary for language acquisition. The task activity and achievement are motivational. Learning difficulty can be negotiated and fine-tuned for a particular pedagogical purpose. Then we have the activities. In this part, we need to know about the main task that must facilitate a process where each student can activate and use his or her own stages. The teachers, of course, needs to monitor the processes of the students working with the main task. The consciousness raising activities is that the students repeat their process and their work with the main task. The process will make students realize that language is diverse and that many different structures and words give meaning and can be used for communication. The teacher must pick up and draw attention to relevant grammatical and semantic points in the last phrase of the TBL cycle. We have here a little examples that if you have a class of older learners, college students or professionals, they will have to learn how to talk at mixers, parties and business functions. This means that they will need to learn to talk using a combination of small talk and job talk. Many students who are studying a second language are doing so because they are either living in the country where the language is spoken or they want to visit that country. We can make a task-based activity that will prepare them for that moment. Of course, the task-based teaching, the focus is not only on grammar. You have already introduced your students to necessary constructions earlier in the chapter or unit, as well as to the vocabulary they will need to complete the task. But rather on helping students develop linguistic strategies for completing the assigned task within the constraints of what they know of the target language, because the emphasis is on spontaneous, creative language use, whether spoken or written, rather than absolute accuracy. Assessment is based on task outcome. We have here a little of examples that can we use what are use the foreign language as much as possible. Of course, use only mother tongue when necessary for explanation of exercises. Give words, of course, and supporting sentence for students to use. And of course, the pre-task must supply words, phrases, ideas to support the individual students in the main task. Of course, that could be an audio, a video clip, a brainstorm activity, a small exercises, for example, crosswords or maybe photos. Then we have the conclusion. Okay, in the conclusion, we have that the lesson described shows that in the TBL, the tasks are a way to promote the use of authentic and genuine language with a focus on meaning and communication. When employing this approach to teaching, thus teachers need to be prepared to design relevant and meaningful tasks, adopt a number of roles in the classroom, and possess that linguistic competence to deal with emergent language and provide students with useful feedback and practice. And this is the end of this presentation. Thank you so much.